Hello, friends. It's good to be with you, even though I can't see you. I know you're there. I miss being with you. I miss our interaction. I miss the comments that you all make. I miss all the fun that we have learning about you. I miss all of that. But for the moment, this is the way it's going to be, I guess. It won't last forever. The coronavirus will go away eventually, and we'll be able to get back together again. For now, thought you might be interested in the continuing conversation I've had with God that I started. I reported the beginning of the last time we were together. And so I will begin at the beginning again, repeat a little bit of it, refresh our minds as to what was said, and then go on with the rest of it. We met on March the 11th, on Wednesday. That morning, that was a Wednesday, that morning, after my time, well, I was with the Lord, but it was after my worship time, praise time. I like to start times with the Lord by singing praise songs to Him. And after I'd finished that, instead of getting out my list of questions, my list of requests, things that were on my laundry list of things to put before Him, I said to Him, Lord, what's on your mind? What's on your heart today? Because I wanted to know what He's interested in. I want to know what He's thinking. I want my thoughts to be His thoughts. And if I don't ask Him, I never know what His thoughts are. So I asked Him, what's on your mind? What's on your heart? And there was quiet for a few moments. And then 2 or 3 words, all jumbled together, flashed past my mind so fast that I couldn't catch them, couldn't grasp them, couldn't recognize any words. And then the word disobedience stuck in my mind. Now that's a big subject. I had not specified what's on your mind about me, what's on your mind about the groups I'm with, what's on your mind about the world. I just asked, what's on your mind? And He said disobedience. And disobedience can be doing what we're not supposed to do or not doing what we are supposed to do. It is a big subject. So I asked for more. And I didn't get anything more. Later in the day, as I was thinking about what He'd said to me, the personal application that I shared last time we were together came up. I'm not going to include that here. It's not part of this message. Well, that was the 11th of March, a Wednesday. On the 13th of March, a Friday, after my time of worship with the Lord in the morning, I asked Him for more clarity about what He'd shown me on Wednesday. More clarity about disobedience. What's He thinking about this? And then I had the understanding that He is beginning to judge disobedience. Now, it wasn't words that He said to me. It was an understanding that came to me. If you've never had that happen, I don't know how to explain it. But it was the understanding that He is beginning to judge disobedience. And the passage in 1 Peter 4:17 came to my mind. The passage says, "For it is time for judgment to begin with God's household." And my understanding from that is that His judgment for disobedience is going to be on churches, not individuals. There's going to be spillover to individuals, but He's not out looking for who didn't do some little thing, who didn't say the right thing, who said the wrong thing, who sped through Prescott Valley rather than following the speed limit. Yeah, that's not what He's looking at. He's looking at disobedience of churches, his body. And then a passage came to my mind that he'll provide a way of escape. And as I thought about that, I thought, wait a minute, isn't that passage about temptation, not judgment? So I looked it up. And it's 1 Corinthians chapter 10, verse 13. No temptation has overtaken you except what is common to mankind. And God is faithful. He will not let you be tempted beyond what you can bear. But when you are tempted, he will also provide a way out so that you can endure it. Temptation. But he's not bringing temptation. That's not what he was talking to. He was talking to me about disobedience and judgment of disobedience. So how does this pertain to disobedience, to judgment? Well, I read it through again and I came to that last phrase that says he will also provide a way out. And it was an understanding. This pertains to the judgment that he's bringing. And as I contemplated that, I thought, well, how do I understand this? Because the passage says temptation. But my understanding is he's providing a way out for judgment. And as I thought of it, a couple of things came to my mind. If he does not provide a way of escape from judgment, then will someone please explain to me all that experience, that story in Nineveh at the time of Jonah? Jonah preached from one side of the city to the other, that in a number of days the city would be destroyed. And the people repented, put on sackcloth and ashes, sought God, and God relented. And Nineveh was not destroyed. If that's not a way of escape from judgment, I'm not sure what it is. And then I thought of one more thing. If you walk out the gates of Jerusalem and look up on the hill at that cross is a beacon of escape from judgment. He provided it for each one of us, for all of us. A way to escape judgment. So I thought, okay, you're providing a way of escape from this judgment. How? And my next thought was of the Bob Jones Super Bowl prophecy. If you're not aware of it, 20 years ago, Bob Jones prophesied that the next time the Kansas City Chiefs won the Super Bowl, it would mark the beginning of a worldwide revival that would usher in the end days, the end times. And there were those with Bob Jones who agreed with that prophecy and expanded it to say that there will be stadiums filled with people seeking God during that revival. The Super Bowl was February 2nd. During February, it is reported there were at least three events in Brazil in which stadiums were filled with people seeking God. That revival will be a way of escape from this judgment. And I've got more, there'll be more along that line of escape later in this, in what I have to say. And that was all I had at that point. And I thought, if I don't get this written down, I won't remember it. So I got paper and pencil and wrote all this down from the Wednesday before and from that day, and got it all written. And as I was putting the writing away, my eyes fell on a note from September the 8th of last year, in which I was considering a specific, very limited topic that never went anywhere. But I wrote 2 passages down. And my eyes fell on these passages, and my understanding was these passages are relevant to what we're doing now, to what God's saying to me, to this judgment for disobedience. And here's what they are. First one, Jesus speaking. Luke chapter 6, verse 46. Why do you call me Lord, Lord, and do not do what I say? In Matthew 15, verses 8 and 9, again, Jesus speaking, and he's quoting Isaiah 29, verse 13. These people honor me with their lips, but their hearts are far from me. They worship me in vain. Their teachings are but rules taught by men. And as I was contemplating that, I began to realize that the judgment he's bringing will be a process, not an instantaneous point when it'll happen. It'll begin at varying times in different churches around the world. It will take different styles. It will take different types of judgment, but they'll all have the ultimate goal, the ultimate end of judging disobedience in churches. And it will be a process. It begins, it will run for a while, and eventually judgment will be delivered in its completion. And while I was considering that, Matthew 3, verse 10, Matthew chapter 3, verse 10 came to my mind. In Matthew chapter 3, John the Baptist is out baptizing folks. And in verse 10, he looks up and sees the Pharisees and the Sadducees coming toward him. The Pharisees and the Sadducees were the religious leaders of his day. So he saw the religious leaders coming toward him. And he said, "The axe is already at the root of the trees, and every tree that does not produce good fruit will be cut down and thrown into the fire." And that was all I had that day. 2 days later, March 15th, on Sunday morning, again, during my time with the Lord, I was contemplating this passage in Matthew, chapter 3, verse 10. And specifically, the last part where John said, every tree that does not produce good fruit will be cut down. And I can imagine there are many of the religious leaders of today who will say, we produce good fruit. We have a growing attendance. We have increasing numbers who sign commitment cards. We have people accepting the Lord. We have outreaches to the community. We touch the community. We are producing good fruit. But I urge you to consider, we are not the inspectors of the fruit. Jesus is the inspector. And if we want to consider how he might be inspecting, looking at the 7 letters to the churches in Revelation chapters 2 and 3 might be instructive. And then I thought of Matthew 7, chapter 7, verses 21 through 23. Not everyone who says to me, Lord, Lord, will enter the kingdom of heaven, but only the one who does the will of my Father who is in heaven. Many will say to me on that day, Lord, Lord, did we not prophesy in your name, and in your name drive out demons, and in your name perform many miracles? Then I will tell them plainly, I never knew you. Away from me, you evildoers. Perhaps he doesn't know us because of our disobedience, because we do not do the will of the Father. And then my cry was, but what disobedience? What disobedience? And immediately Mark chapter 7 came to my mind. Specifically verses 8 and 13. The whole first part of the chapter is instructive, but verse 8 says, Jesus speaking both in both verse 8 and verse 13. Jesus says, verse 8, you have abandoned the commands of God and are hanging on to the traditions of men. And in verse 13, Jesus says, thus you nullify the word of God by your traditions that you have handed down. Perhaps leadership should examine our traditions to see which ones nullify the commands of God. As of today, March 21st, 2020, that is what God has shared with me. This is my understanding of it. I don't believe that this is the only thing he's doing. I think this is a piece of a bigger picture. But it is one of the important things that will impact all of our churches, all of us, during the coming days. And how long do I think this will take? I never asked God, he never said. But my suspicion is I may not live long enough to see the end of it. He is a very patient God. He is very, very patient. It's been 17 years since we've been doing church this way. He's had a purpose and a plan from the beginning of creation for what he gets, what he wants out of it. And we're, 4,000 or 5,000 years in. Maybe, I'm just thinking of since Abraham. More years than that since creation. He's very, very patient. And he loves us. And he will give us an escape if we will take it. If we will turn from our traditions and pursue him. Now, dear friends, if I were giving this message to a collection of church leadership, I mean the leadership in a specific church, next is what I would say. Friends, I am going to leave. It is time for you to decide what you want to do. You can decide that I am a nut, that I had bad pizza and it caused me to have bad dreams and bad thoughts, and it put all this together and it's my imagination, and you're perfectly happy with the way things are. After all, you may say, the way we do church was good enough for my grandmother, it's good enough for my mother, and it's good enough for me. I'm not going to change anything. Or you may say, we want to examine the traditions. We want to change our ways. We want God. We want Jesus. We want to pursue Him. Do not want to be in disobedience. If you're in the former category, I can't help you. But if you're wanting God, if you're wanting to pursue Jesus and wanting to examine the traditions of your church, and I'm not talking about what you've been doing as an outreach for the last 2 years. That's not the tradition I'm talking about. I'm talking about the church traditions that have been in place for so long we think they're in the Bible because we read them into it. And they're not there. But we think they are. If that's the position you take, that you want to examine that, you want to pursue that, I can help you. Contact me. And I'll be happy to meet with you. Thank you. And I'll see you soon. I'll see you real soon in my prayers. I love you. And I look forward to when we can be together again.